Hey everyone, it's Jeremy with Teletone. I'm excited because today we are releasing our third standalone plugin. Early in 2025, we released our very first standalone effects plugin. It was called Tone Architect, and it was a tone shaping saturation multiband compressor of sorts. And then we followed that up with Silver Spring, which was a vibey spring reverb. And today we are pleased to announce the release of our brand new plate reverb plugin called Prism Plate. Prism Plate is a modern approach to plate reverb. It has 5 different colors of plates. It has a tube drive section, which was modeled after the Pioneer SR101 tube circuit. It has high and low pass filters and a variety of other controls, which we will dive into a little bit deeper here in a second. And I wanted to mention from the outset that after you watch this video, you are welcome to go download a free trial of Prism Plate from our website, teletoneaudio.com. And the idea of a Prism Plate reverb was we wanted to create a plate reverb that had a lot of colorful options in it. And let's go ahead and look at some of these presets. Normally we do a bunch of presets at the end, but I thought that this would be a more interesting way of exploring the controls here. So I've loaded up a preset called Vocal Modern Lead, and this is something I am using on the vocal of this track. This is a song called Bullet that I wrote with my friend Annie years ago. Let's just have a listen to the, going into the chorus here.
And I'll take another step. Do you know what you're doing to me? How can I keep myself away while I'm falling hard for you?
Bypass.
I never known this kind of love. I can't help it, I'm falling hard for you. You won't say, you won't show how you feel. How do you feel?
So let's dive into this a little bit. You can see that I have selected the Lumen plate for this one. Lumen is actually the brightest plate of the 5, because of the fact that we have the filter on here, you can still change the amount of sibilance that you let in. And so you can see I've used a little bit of this low pass and really just cutting off the very, very top of the frequencies. I've also carved out a little bit of the sub information. Looks like anything below 72 Hertz we have cut off. I have it set to 3 seconds, and then I have this pre-delay turned up quite a bit. This is at 35 milliseconds. Using this pre-delay, especially on a vocal, can be really, really helpful to make sure that the voice is sitting front and center, and that the reverb kind of sits more behind it, that it doesn't get too washy. I have increased the stereo width just a little bit. And then I'm not using any drive on this. But while we have this loaded up, let's go ahead and just hear another plate. I'm going to switch over to this glass, which is actually pretty close to the traditional EMT sound.
And I'll take another step. Do you know what you're doing to me? How can I keep myself away while I'm falling hard for you?
Switch back.
I never known this kind of love. I can't help it, I'm falling hard for you.
Back to glass.
You won't say, you won't show how you feel. How do you feel?
So some subtle differences, but I think that's going to come through even if you're listening on a laptop. You can hear the difference in tone between Lumen and glass. And I do have the modulation button set to on. That just gives the tail of the reverb a little bit more life. You turn that on and off right here. I tend to just leave this on. And maybe one more thing before we move on. Let's just hear one other vocal preset, maybe something with a little bit of a longer tail. Let's try this ethereal one. This has an 8-second tail on it. And this is using the glass plate.
And I'll take another step. Do you know what you're doing to me? How can I keep myself away while I'm falling hard for you? I never known this kind of love. I can't help it, I'm falling hard for you. You won't say, you won't show how you feel. How do you feel?
So with that longer time on there, it almost makes the vocal, like the reverb of the vocal, into kind of like a pad. Okay, let's move on to some other sounds. All right, so let's take a big left turn and go over to guitar. I'm going to load up an instance of our instrument, Voyager guitar. And let's look at this preset, Guitar Midwest Post Rock. This is using the glass plate. And it looks like we have some pre-delay, a little bit of added width, and then some of the high end rolled off, as well as a little bit of the low. And you'll notice I'm using 2.5 here, and that is the only decimal on this dial. And we found that there really is a sweet spot between 2 and 3 that becomes really useful, so that's why we created this added step between 2 and 3. So I am using some drive on this one. And the drive is going to be affected by the input, so if you ever want more drive out of what you're doing, you can either turn the knob up, or you can also increase the input to get something a lot more distorted. We'll go ahead and turn the output down. So there really are a ton of tonal possibilities using all these different controls. Okay, let's move on to piano. And I'm trying to showcase a lot of different genres and instruments and sources to use with Prism Plate, because I thought it'd be a little bit more interesting and applicable than just doing a bunch of Motown stuff, which is what I think you normally see with the Plate Reverb walkthrough. So I'm going to load up Broadcast Piano, which is our latest piano that we recorded and released earlier this year. Here is Piano Classical Hall, and this is using the Vapor plate, which is it is the darkest plate of the 5, and this is something that we have time stretched to get some kind of interesting artifacts. It's very subtle, but it has a really, really nice warm, dark sound to it. And so let's hear, I've been in a Scriabin mood for the past 6 months, so let's hear some Scriabin. And on this one, we've added a little bit of pre-delay. The time is set to 2. And then, yeah, we are using the darkest one. And then I've even cut out a little bit more of the highs right here with the low pass. It looks like we filtered out everything below 345 Hertz. And that is Piano Classical Hall. But we'll load up one other piano preset. This one is Piano Subtle Shimmer. This uses the Lumen plate, which again is the brightest one. I have cut out a little bit of the highs. But I'll show it to you without this engaged as well. But this is for if you wanted something a little more immediate that sounded like a little bit of a smaller room type of effect. And then I'm going to load up Oracle, which is one of our synth instruments. And I have this preset called Synth Black Hole Drive. This uses the Vapor plate, which again is the darkest one. And on this preset, I have the mix all the way up, a bit of pre-delay, some filtering, but I'm using the 10-second tail on this. And I'm going to be using the bypass on and off so you can really hear this. I'll start with it on. So as you can hear, it does a lot more than your typical plate reverb is going to do. We have that drive cranked all the way up, and we could even get a little bit more if we wanted to, if we turned up the input. But I feel like this is sitting at a place that's pretty good. Okay, let's move over to drums. I have an instance of Soulfy loaded up with a beat playing, and I'm using this preset called Subtle Soul. And we have the time set to 2.5, some pre-delay. I have the mix turned down quite a bit for this example. I'm using the Spectrum plate on this one, which has some really interesting early reflections. A little bit of drive. Let's go ahead and hear it. And you don't always associate reverb with like adding character and vibe to a mix or an instrument, but in this case, I think it absolutely does. And a part of that is that I have reduced the stereo width of this. And I would argue that even going all the way mono with this might be a benefit to this drum sound. So let's hear it with the width turned down even more. Yeah, I think that for a drum beat like this, a much more narrow reverb sounds really nice. When I turn it up, it sounds kind of awkward to me. The drums and the reverb are kind of living in a different timeline. And let's go ahead and add a reverb to retrograde bass. Bass is probably not the first thing that comes to mind when you're thinking about reverb, but we have. Let me load up this preset. So yeah, I have this preset called Bass Little Slap. The time on it is very short. I have the pre-delay all the way up to create a little bit of that slapback effect. Width is turned down almost all the way to mono, and then I've filtered out most of the sub information. I'm using the shadow plate on this one, another dark plate. Also looks like drive is turned up quite a bit. And I'm going to play this with the drums because I kind of made these two ideas together. So you can hear how the reverb helps the bass to live kind of in the same world as the drums here. Okay, let's go to some strings. I have a violin instrument loaded up, and then I'm using the preset Strings Vintage Violins, and I'm using the Spectrum plate once again. Mix turned up about halfway. I'm leaving most of the low end in there, well, all of it. I have a bit of drive. Now, I don't really have control over your input signal, and so for the violins, this is not really breaking up much because it is playing mostly in the higher end, which doesn't drive as easily. But you may find that you need to mess with the input going up or down depending on how much drive you're getting. So again, two places to kind of affect the amount of drive that you're getting. Let's hear these violins. This Spectrum plate really adds a bit of dimension to the sound. I really like that one. Let's stay on strings and go to this cello line, and I'm using a preset called Strings Lush Lows. This is using the shadow plate, again, one of the darker plates of the 5. So I believe that we've basically covered about everything that has to do with the sound. The last couple orders of business we could look at are, for one, you can always save your own presets, and you just do that by clicking that disk icon. You're going to name it, save it, and then it's going to show up under User Presets down at the bottom. All the factory presets are listed above, including INITIALIZE, which is right here, and that's going to reset the plugin to the default settings. You can also delete any preset by using this trash can icon. And if you are doing the free trial, you can redeem a serial number after you purchase by clicking this. I've already registered, but that is one way that you could take it from a free trial to an authorized full version. So that's going to do it for this walkthrough. Prism Plate is out now. If you go to our website, teletoneaudio.com, you can download a free trial and try it out for yourself. On our website, we also have a bunch of A/B demos where you can listen to different sources and tracks with and without the reverb, which might be helpful for you. Follow us on Instagram at Teletone Audio. We're going to put up a bunch of videos on YouTube as well, so make sure to keep an eye on that. Thank you so much for watching, and we're really excited to see what you do with Prism Plate.